ready for. I know there's evil people out there, and we should stop them. But there's also, life's tough, man. Sometimes people pop, and they're not like all there. Or if you're mentally like, you're a crazy person, but you have a guardian, and the guardian lost where you were for a second, and you pick up a kid. Like things can happen, and you should. If you've got a kid, like I'm a dad. Like if I'm watching a kid in the playground, you ain't getting out, dude.
Yeah.
Like I'm watching you.
Yeah.
Like it's your baby.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy to me, and I know it happens to some people. It's brutal, but like, how do you leave your kid in a car?
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
That I don't.
You don't.
Well, if you're going to the strip club and
Unless
Or 11 and
unless it's intentional and they're just
locked.
claiming it's not.
it's always a bar or strip club or something as well.
I would ask to be left in the car. My mom would take me shopping. I didn't want to go walk around Joanne Fabrics for an hour and touch fabrics, so I would be like, "Can I stay in the car and play on my watch?" I had a watch video game.
Is the
That's
car,
right.
is
One
the
time
car
she's like,
on and
"Wait,
is it locked?
No, car's off. It's locked. Windows were cracked. Or there were the handhold rollers, so I could roll them
Okay,
up and down
that's
if I
cool.
needed.
Yeah.
And I just
Yeah, but
sat
how
there
old
for
were you?
45 minutes. Between the age of 11 and
Okay, come on.
13 or something.
Talking about babies.
10 to 13.
Yeah.
Okay, no.
There are all these stories
totally
of
different
people
things,
like
sorry.
forget their babies in the back seat and the baby dies.
Man,
Like
you
within
can't
20 minutes.
forget your.
Yeah, those
Come
are
on, dude.
That's crazy.
You shouldn't be a parent.
Neglect. It's a crime called
Like that's
neglect.
There's unfortunate. There's
your dog. I don't care. Dog, cat, like baby. You don't leave them in the car. You don't forget. It's your family. What are we doing here?
a lot of
I-
stories.
there's-
Of people snap and kill their kids, and then they come up with some abstract medical situation, and it's like, okay.
There was one story I saw where a cop left his dog in his SUV. He like pulled him in front of his house, went inside, and then like 45 minutes later, he realized the dog was in. The dog was dead.
Cops love killing dogs, though.
Dude,
They do. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, that'll be for tomorrow's debate on the culture war. We've got Michael Malice and Richard High, Angry Cops. That'll be my claim. I'll say, like Michael Malice is no, cops are bad, and Richard High's cops are good. And I'm gonna be like, my argument is just that cops like killing dogs.
They certainly do. The amount I've seen. They're
Go to
so
NFL.
trigger happy.
NFL quarterbacks, Michael Vick, they like doing it too. So.
I gotta be honest. I'm joking. I don't actually think cops like killing dogs, but I have seen some videos where I really question if the cops just wanted to kill a dog.
Yeah,
For real.
straight up. One of them was a Chihuahua.
I've never seen that one.
That one might be justified, to be fair.
Yeah, fair. Okay.
A guy shot a chihuahua.
Yeah.
Where? When?
Crazy. What
Yeah.
happened?
He was like, well, he was actually at first it was either Chihuahua or one of those miniature poodles. What are they called?
Miniature poodle.
Miniature
I don't
poodle.
know.
Toy poodle.
Yeah, the annoying ones. But no, he was actually really working towards a positive, like bringing it back to the home, and then he just like got bored and shot it.
What?
This is a real thing.
Are you kidding?
No, it's a real thing.
Was it in the United
Cop
States?
shot a toy poodle?
Yeah.
Because he was bored?
Well, it seemed
Yeah, I
that
don't know
way,
if
and then he
bored
comes
was-
back and he goes, I had to dispatch it. Like dispatch?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I gotta be honest. I just Google searched cop shoots toy poodle and like
Nothing.
78,000.
Oh, 78,000. Okay, there you go.
It's like open season on these little
I mean,
I've never trained as a cop. I imagine they're told
Oh,
if a
this is-
dog aggresses on you, you have the right to kill it.
if you're
cop
bored, you have the right
shoots
to
small
kill it.
blind dog.
Yeah, it was blind too. How about that?
Oh, well,
Even
What
more
is-
reason to take it out.
Here we go. In Missouri, cop was up there shot a small blind dog.
I think he's putting it out of his misery. I mean, look at that thing.
There's video too.
Was this the one you were talking about?
Yeah, it looks like him. I recognize him.
Teddy was blind and deaf.
Right, so he couldn't hear and he couldn't see.
Is that the killer?
Shot him because he thought he was coming at him.
His little
Yeah, that's what it must have been. Yeah.
Little tiny-
Which is, look at that dog.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it's coming at you, should you worry? If you worry, you shouldn't be a cop.
Yeah.
Look at this thing.
If you can't handle that, if you can't handle that guy hand to hand, you should not be.
That's
What's his name? Teddy?
To be fair, Teddy was 13 pounds.
Okay.
No. Oh,
All right, let's turn that shit off. Let's see, get my cam up. Yo, full screen, fuck yeah, baby. Just chill about right there. Need a rope.
That looks good on.
What do I have in my inventory? Oh, garden patch. Let's see real quick. Let's see if we can do this. didn't go that far. Yo, what's up, guys? What's happening? Let's see. I don't think I got YouTube or X chat pulled up, but you know. That's gonna annoy the fuck out of me.
Buggy gotta work on that cardio. Hell, don't you go running off on me again. Web's got me. Yeah, boy. Slam. Yeah. Yeah.
Actually need some acorn is what I really need. There's 2 orb weavers here.
Web's got me.
Looking for some chunks, bro. Chunk, chunk, chunk. Junior. I need a big guy. That bombarder beetle? Oh yeah, I'll take him on.
Even I can't take this. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I actually do want that.
Buggy's getting roughed up. Hang on, Buggy boy. good?
That dude was a pussy.
Oh, we good. Yeah. We good. That looks good on me.
Nine of 30. Okay.
Buggy out of gas. Get buggy. Feeling it.
God dang. Gotta stop vaping. Wait, what? My torch just go in his inventory? Oh, it did.
I ain't gonna walk around in the dark like an idiot.
Eh. Yeah, thank you guys for watching on X, YouTube, Twitch, and Kick. Thank you guys, thank you guys. So let's see. I mean, I want the milk chunks. I want the chunky milk, baby. Take some of that chunky ass milk. I don't need mosquitoes. Well, wouldn't hurt. Just gonna jump slam their ass, would be good.
But he's loaded to the max.
Oh, we got a live one. Take all the full-grown scorpions I can get. Bombardier beetles, scorpions, wolf spiders, all day. All fucking day, baby. Wait, actually, oh, you can't do the first person on the buggy. Actually, didn't know till now. Just a normal roach. Bombarder beetles, wolf spiders.
I'm starting to have a fan club.
What the fuck? What are all these guys doing? There's so many. I want to kill them all.
It's better when you hunt it yourself.
Why does that keep messing?
That looks good on.
I just don't get it.
Come on.
It's like 40 ants here. Oh, there we go. Now they're on me. Let's see. My inventory's full.
Look at you. Look at you.
Damn, is that really it?
Yeah.
Oh god. So I'm working with here. I have not messed with my base at all, obviously. I haven't messed with any of the stuff. Just keep depositing. Honestly, I guess let's just go deposit this and then go on our way. Don't really care about that. Don't care about that. What's up, Katie? Wait. Kitty, what are you doing, dude? What are you doing over here?
Ah, that hit the spot.
Bro, you're being fucking weird. You're being so needy. So needy today. Let's see, food's up. Should not make that one, but whatever. running out of bombs for right now. Let's see. I don't think I can make the full wolf's armor yet. Oh, I totally can. So many. I don't want to miss a trinket though.
done. Yeah.
Nice. Ooh.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I gotta go there. It's the highest place we can get to.
Woo! My heart is pumping.
Open. Oh no, that deposit my Wait. No.
Buggy gotta work on his cardio.
Give me the milkweed.
Just looking, I promise. You can run, but you can't hide. Yeah. Ain't no bug going in there. Approaching snowman status. Give me that pink goo.
Got apple bites out of a hot dog? Why does it say that's the only spot? That is not the only spot, bro. Don't really need a lot of blueberries.
That looks good on.
Stink bug. I got enough stink bugs.
Give me that pink food.
That update though, it seems to be running better.
Yeah.
Fuck me.
Take your best shot, Bugs.
Oh, it does the same thing. Same defense. Actually, it doesn't even matter. Thought it might actually matter a little bit. Ooh, a wolf spider sleeping down there. Where the fuck are you sleeping at? Somebody's sleeping on the fucking job.
Yeah.
Damn, bro, these fucking daggers just... Yeah, not even a question. I'm so glad I fucking got these. Give me them arrows back, bitch. Give me them arrows back, bitch. This looks like it's a lot... Yeah, you're gonna be able to explore this later. 100%. Like, that doesn't even look right.
That looks good on.
Are you kidding me, finally? Can I upgrade? Oh, no. Oh, no, I need 2 more. Consumables. That's fine.
It's swole time!
Yeah.
It's like nothing to mine. I was hoping for something to mine. Kind of lame.
Gross. Gross. Yeah. Yeah.
Spoiled. They are adding swimming in the game. I did see like a perk for swimming. So I'm just randomly saying that because like I'd be pretty happy with that. But this reminds me of like honestly, RuneScape Dragon Wilds is a billion times more fun, I would say, than this. I haven't played a game in fuck, I don't even know how long. Dang it, bro. I'll be back, guys. Be right back. Oh, it's Hyde? You wanna go potty real quick? Guys, I'll be right back. 2 minutes. Well, more like 3 or 4, but what the fuck? Jeez Louise. Damn it, we got a bot in here. No, bad dog. Don't be doing that shit. A little tired. Bro, I know I don't got any viewers. I don't even care. I don't do this for viewers. Be cool, but all I do is talk shit. And honestly, just streaming for the long haul. Just having
Looks good on them.
clips, having videos.
Woo! My heart is pumping.
I'd rather have something than nothing out there on the interwebs. Did both those go bad? So dumb. Let's go bad so fast.
Tastes better when you hunt it yourself.
Fast as fuck, boy. Fast as fuck, boy.
Yeah.
Guess I might have just figured out the best way to get home. Worked it out of my brain. The fastest way to get to your home base. Well, oh no, I'm at the well. It's like I'm at the tree. No, that's it's still too far away.
Yeah.
Maybe I might as well get more. I'm gonna go back to base and drop these off. I do need these.
Lighten up. It ain't so bad.
Fuck out of the way, yeah. Oh, that was weak. Oh, I can get that. some plant fiber.
Yeah.
Fuck. It's an ice cream machine.
Don't stir up the boat.
Let's... You can still hold quite a bit, bud. Spring sap junk.
Take a breath, big guy. Any more weight on this bug and I'll have to walk.
I mean, I'm not. You know, just hold. You hold on to that stuff, dude. Yeah, you hold on to that stuff. One, two, I'll take. I'm gonna hop on Rocket League for a minute, and then switch back over because I want to explore the ice cream machine. what's up, guys? Anybody got a mic? Mic? Still in net. Pushing midfield. Waiting on you. Chaotic can get the hit. I don't know what the fuck that was, but he literally just set it on his bar for like 3 seconds. But we are in chain. Over to you, bud. Decent little save. Sick own goal, dude. Definitely didn't expect that guy to come down and hit though. But sick own goal, bro. Hey, I went up to see if you're gonna pass it into my car. So sorry I touched your car though. It was sexual for sure, bro. That sucks. It's all you, baby. They should be fucked up enough here, like. That's unfortunate. That's really good though. Let's fucking go, dude! Hell yeah. Chaotic.tom, man. You need to put a dot in there, bro. It's like coming to .com, but .tom. Oh, you done fucked up, Tom. Never mind. I legit thought it was a tie game. GG's, boys. Sorry, bro. I tried to pinch it with you, homie. It's like I'm countering everything here, bruh. That was so gay, dude. No boost. Those kids were fucking terrible. Oh, bro, back to champ 3 div. Oh my god. Probably about time to go explore that ice box. Yo, Vaunt, you a bot, bro. Oh my god. Sorry I left you hanging there, turtle. Ah, damn, bro. I say you for the pass. Open net. Just cut him, dude. Had faith in my boy. Oh my god, bro. What the fuck kind of shit? I was right there, man. God, bro. This is why I'm balding, honestly. It's just fucking weird. Easy. Now that is sad and tough. Sad and tough. So bad. We should not have lost that. I did fuck up on one goal, though, I will say. But regardless, gay as fuck. Alright, fuck it. Let's go back. Let's go back. We gotta explore this icebox.
Hey, I'm Maxwell. Maxwell Smalls. Remember that name.
The fuck? Kind of weird. Man, dude. This game is still pretty buggy. So, It is what it is. They had another update today, so that was good. Let's see what we got on the old Google.
Clearer statement or a clearer idea of the statements that were made by Dmitry Medvedev. This is the statement. The President of the United States playing the ultimatum game with Russia 50 days or 10, he should remember two things. Russia isn't Israel or even Iran, and each new ultimatum is a threat in step towards war, not between Russia and Ukraine, but with his own country. Don't go down and then made a political statement or largely a political joke. Nevertheless, it is incredibly clear at this point that this threat has been taken quite seriously by the President of the United States, as we were able to hear that earlier today, 2 nuclear submarines are now being publicly deployed towards the Russian Federation in response to the statements that were made today. And according to a direct statement made on social media by the President of the United States, based on the highly provocative statements of the former President of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, who is now the Deputy Chairman of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, I have ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions, just in case these foolish and inflammatory statements are more than just that. Words are very important and can often lead to unintended consequences. I hope this will not be one of those instances. It was also then followed along immediately afterwards that the Russian Federation is going to be hit with crippling sanctions on August 8th. And according to statements made by the government, Russia won't have any friends nor any trading partners beyond these sanctions being implemented on the 8th of August. The Russian Federation has responded largely in its own form today, as it is also stated that Oreshnik hypersonic nuclear-capable missiles are now going to be deployed into the Republic of Belarus. As we have been able to hear, that Putin announced that the first serial production of the Oreshnik systems has been completed and will be deployed in Belarus by the end of the year. We also were able to see that statement made directly by Vladimir Putin earlier today as well, which we can see in this clip right here.
У нас произведен первый серийный комплекс «Орешник». Первая серийная ракета. Да. И она поступила в войска. Теперь серия заработала. Первое. Второе. Наши специалисты, и белорусские военные специалисты, и российские, выбрали место для будущих позиций. Сейчас идет работа по подготовке позиций. Скорее всего, до конца года этот вопрос.
It seems a bit odd that Putin's talking about serial production of the Oreshnik, considering that the Oreshnik has not even been proven to be totally viable yet. And remember, there's been a lot of rumors running around. The Oreshnik has been launched before, and it's failed multiple times. And also the development timeline on that weapon has been tremendous. A lot of setbacks, a lot of failures. So for Russia not to have really properly proven the weapon to be effective, for them to put it into serial production, that almost seems unbelievable or a flat-out lie.
It does appear that this may be an extreme fib, but it is not unheard of, at least in Soviet or Russian weapons development cycles, to greatly overstate the competence or capability of the weapon systems that they produce. A large amount of Soviet and Russian weapon systems that were either developed during the time of the Soviet Union or the modern-day Russian Federation since 1991 are generally plagued with a great deal of problems and issues that are generally covered up or completely swept under the rug to rush them into actual usable service. A great example of that would be the original Tu-22 heavy bombers, or more so strategic bombers, of the Russian Federation seen here. These aircraft were actually rushed into service rapidly, but actually had a tendency, due to the vibrations of the engine nacelles, to actually rip the strategic bombers apart in flight. The Russian Federation then had to revisit the entire aircraft and rebuild it into the Tu-22 M3 to make it a usable strategic bomber by any real measure or any real purposes, to even get the original intended performance out of the prior airframe. This is a fairly similar instance to that we've seen with other systems like the Sarmat, which have a 20% success rate when launched, which is abysmally low, at least in their test launches, and we have heard and seen multiple times that the Russian Federation's Oreshnik hypersonic missile system appears to have failed multiple times publicly in its weapons tests, and this means that the weapon system, even if it enters serial production, most likely has a large amount of failures or critical errors inside of its design or usage, and for for that reason will not pose any real capable strategic deterrent for the Russian Federation inside of Eastern Europe. Nevertheless, it is an attempt by the Russian Federation to try and match and one-up the statements that were made publicly today that U.S. nuclear ballistic missile carrier submarines are currently being deployed to face off against the Russian Federation inside of the surrounding territories. This is something that I do have to say is commonly done. U.S. ballistic missile submarines are always on patrol. They are a constant part of U.S. nuclear deterrence, but the public statement made today is more so, in a sense, putting a burner under the asses of the Russians to make them incredibly scared to make any actions, because it's now being publicly put on notice that these nuclear submarines aren't just on patrol within their areas, they are on patrol with their targets aimed at the Russians. So that is generally something that I do have to make clear. These ballistic missile submarines are always on patrol, but it is the fact that a public statement was made about their deployment and the fact that they are being intentionally sent to deter or face down the Russian Federation that is of significant note, and it is largely an escalatory statement, if any, to attempt to put the Russians in a rock and a hard place. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been talking about how the Russian Federation is going to be responding to this action by the United States that has been made today, as it is one of the most escalatory actions that we have seen against the Russian Federation. It actually is the most escalatory action that we've seen against the Russian Federation so far since the war in Ukraine began on February 23rd of 2022. And it does appear that a lot of people are talking about this statement and what the Russians will respond with. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it looks like about 43% of the audience said that Russia is going to respond basically to these nuclear submarine deployments with nuclear threats at the USA. They're going to try that yet again, according to 43% of the audience. While 27% said they're going to respond with Russian submarine deployments, and 22% said nothing major is going to happen, and Putin will largely ignore the entire escalation by the United States. Now, this is a huge escalation, by the way. I know a lot of people were telling me in the comments video today that this is always happening, it's always patrols around Russia, and while that is true, this is the first public announcement of nuclear submarine deployments to the region of Russia on their coast. So that in itself is a major development, a major change, and I believe Putin is going to be forced to react to this. I don't think he can simply ignore it, because otherwise that would make him look extremely weak. So I believe they're going to respond actually with both. I know I wasn't able to put this as a poll option, but I think the Russians are going to announce their own submarine deployments toward the United States, and also they will, of course, resort back to the nuclear threats at the United States. So I think it's going to be a combination of both of them. But the big deal here is this. This is my big thing. The president, in his True Social post, he came out today and said the sole reason that he's putting nuclear submarines on the Russian border publicly is simply because of Medvedev's threats. Medvedev, the drunkard inside of Russia, is one of the first people in history to provoke nuclear submarine deployments, at least publicly, with a tweet that's ever happened in the course of history. That's a historic thing in itself, and that goes to show that even though Medvedev's not the president of Russia anymore, his words still hold weight, and they're taken seriously around the world, even though he is a lunatic. So quite crazy on that front. But Enforcer, what say you?
Not only are alcoholics generally known for having a larger amount of domestic violence incidents, but it appears that now alcoholics, like Dmitry Medvedev, are also responsible for nuclear escalation. I generally think, Matty, that the prohibitionists of the early 20th century may have had a point in saying that the alcohol may be a root of all evil, because it does appear that alcohol-induced rants are generally a great deal of disturbance and concern, not only on the domestic level, but even on the foreign policy level at this point, when it's concerning the Russian Federation. But I do want to make it quite clear that the Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines, or the SSGNs, that are currently being deployed to face off the Russian Federation, have been in service for quite some time and do conduct normal patrols around these areas of Russian and Chinese waters in our modern day and age. But I do want to make it a little bit clear here, the difference. It generally is an understood thing that these submarines are always on patrol. The Russians know that, the Chinese know that, we all know that. That's a fairly normal thing. The issue is, however, is to make note of it. And saying that they're deploying, really quickly, folks, some people said that was an operational security thing. I would like to clear that up. When submarines are deployed, it's already known. Everyone in the world knows it. So it's not an operational security error or a flaw to say that they are being deployed. The issue, however, is that with these statements made today, it is actually drawing attention to those submarines. The president is saying, while these deployments are normal, These are being deployed specifically if the Russians act a little too naughty, we will nuke them. That is what the President of the United States is largely going for with this statement. Does it really mean that there's some sort of a revolutionary shift in our nuclear deterrence policy? Absolutely not. But is it starting to put a lot more pressure on the Russian Federation to understand or realize what's at stake, which is their very existence and survival? Yes. That is generally what is being intended by the President of the United States. Because it's always understood as well, just make this clear, that there is a U.S. Army in Europe at all times. But to bring attention to it is starting to make it quite clear that that is a usable resource that can counter any actions that the Russian Federation makes in the future, just to try and draw a similar comparison in a more conventional light. But this statement alone is actually one that is quite escalatory, at least in its nature. But I will have to say, to be entirely honest with you all, as far as our foreign policy initiative would be concerned on the channel, it is actually one that should be made. For years now, the Russian Federation and multiple government officials have been at liberty to make threats of nuclear destruction and annihilation towards the United States of America and largely the nation as a whole. Not only that, our sphere of influence, including our allies across the whole of Europe and also inside of East Asia. The Russian Federation has been at liberty to do this because the United States has never shown that we would respond. At this moment today, the United States is making it clear that any such threats or actions of the Russian Federation to attempt to bully or to belittle or threaten countries on the international stage through the threat of the use of nuclear weaponry will be responded to in kind by the United States. If the Russians want to play nuclear ball, they have to expect that they are also going to get smacked in the face by the very same ball that they threw the pitch with. And that is something that I think is incredibly important for foreign policy, is a deterrent strategy. Throughout the entirety of the Cold War, every president of the United States made it incredibly clear that any threat of nuclear action would be met with nuclear response. It was a mutually assured destruction doctrine. And it's incredibly important, even still in the modern day, that the United States of America continues to emphasize a mutually assured destruction doctrine. If the Russian Federation wants to make this America's final hour, it is going to be America's finest hour, and we will go out, taking the Russians with us. That is something that needs to be made incredibly clear, because the Russian Federation, if you go to any foreign policy expert on the Russian Federation, and I have to say that one of the forerunning foreign policy experts on the Soviet Union or the Russian Federation was President Nixon, and I'll of course reference y'all to his presidential library to listen to his extrapolation or understanding of how to engage the Russians in foreign policy. The United States must always approach the Russian Federation from a position of strength. We cannot go with a position of understanding or kindness. We must make it clear that we are willing to destroy the Russian Federation to its very core to be able to reach a situation that is just mutually beneficial to both sides. Not entirely one-sided, but to even try and find a mutual common ground in negotiations, we must make it incredibly clear that we will destroy the Russian Federation down to its very last atom, and that is the only way that the Russian Federation will speak to us at a diplomatic level on an equal footing. And they have to believe that we are more than willing to take that route and that action to be able to get to that point. It was the only way that we secured ourselves and it secured the safety of the entirety of the Western sphere of influence during the Cold War, and now in the modern day, it's the only way that we can secure our safety and security for the United States of America and our allies around the world against the Chinese and the Russians, to make that very same thing clear in the modern age. Any Russian threats or aggression of nuclear arms and weaponry will be met with an equal deterrent or response by the United States of America and our allies in Europe.
And really, that's a good way to handle it, too, because, you know, simply letting nuclear threats just fall on deaf ears like it doesn't mean anything, that's a bad precedent to set, because we should not get to the point in the world where we simply sit back and let people literally threaten the destruction of the entire world over them having a bad day. We should really push back on that. For example, if Russia does it, if China does it, no matter who does it, we should push back strong on that and let them know that you can't just run your mouth and threaten to eliminate the entire world just because you decide to wake up today and say something like that. And so far, for the past, I would say 6-7 years, we've let those type of threats just fall on deaf ears like it doesn't mean anything, and we've let people get away with it. It's about time that someone puts their foot down and tells them that's not going to be allowed.
I would have to agree, and I see a lot of people talking about the threats that were issued by Vladimir Putin as well today about the deployment or possible deployment of Oreshnik hypersonic nuclear-capable missiles into the Republic of Belarus, and it does appear that a lot of people are considering that to be a serious threat as well. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so now that Putin said today, while he was sitting next to his good friend Lukashenko, who happens to be his puppet, Putin stated that he's deploying the Oreshnik IRBM, which is nuclear capable, to Belarus very soon, and it's now in mass production, and is a serious threat to NATO. So about 45% said yes, it is a serious threat, while 28% said no, it's not a real threat, and 21% said it's about 50-50 on this one. They're a little bit undecided. And I would say, generally speaking, considering the Oreshnik has not even been proven in combat to be effective, it has a really bad failure rate, according to what we've heard based on reporting. I would say it's not that bad of a threat. It's about 50-50. Now, of course, they're deploying a nuclear-capable missile inside of Belarus, which is like literally on the border of a NATO country. So that would be a cause for some concern. But it's not like it's a super effective weapon that's like something we can't handle. It's not that. So I'm 50-50 on it. In fact, I would call Putin's claims into question, actually, because to put something into mass production that's not even been proven, that sounds a little bit shaky on its face. So it could be a bold-faced lie. That's what it could be. Or maybe he's telling the truth. It's hard to tell. But I'm with the 21%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that even with the Oreshnik having a high failure rate, pushing a weapon system that is hardly even proven to work in a perfect environment is a very Russian thing to do. They did that throughout the whole of the Cold War. We found that out whenever anyone would defect with Soviet weaponry throughout the Cold War, that a lot of their equipment and a lot of their systems hardly worked, if at all. And that was something that we always ended up learning, and a lot of that we ended up learning at the end of the Cold War and after the Cold War. But beyond that, I would actually say that this is a serious threat. As far as the Oreshnik actually working, if called upon to serve for the Russians, that's a whole other question. I would have to largely assume that most of the Oreshniks would not work. Few of them would actually succeed in even making it into the air defense perimeter in Poland, I would assume. But beyond that, it is a serious threat, and the Russian Federation is attempting, even with its pretty much atrophied armed force and also its nuclear deterrent, to try and match the United States statements made today. That's what I had largely assumed. It is a real and an evident threat. It's just that the issue is that while those Oreshniks probably are in mass production, and they most likely will be deployed here in Belarus very soon, they will not have any real practical deterrent capability due to their high failure rate, even in weapon testings inside the Russian Federation at places like Kasputin Yar and other testing fields where we have visually seen the failures of the Russians in real time. But still, it is a very interesting situation. We also were able to hear that the President of the United States, moving back into our news really quickly, stated that the deployment of the U.S. nuclear submarines was to protect our people, or largely the citizenry of the Republic. And according to a direct quote from the President, a threat was made by a former President of Russia, and we are going to protect our people, as in the citizens of the United States of America. This is something that, once again, is largely being made clear that this is a deterrent policy and not one that is supposed to be directly threatening the Russians with a preemptive first strike. It is a response, and I want to make this incredibly clear for everyone, it is a response to a nuclear threat or threat of nuclear war made by a former president of the Russian Federation, and our response is not to try and provoke a nuclear conflict. It is to show that if the Russians were to decide to start a nuclear conflict, we are going to finish them, as in the United States of America. We cannot really speak for the French or the British, which are also nuclear armed. I'm not really sure what their nuclear deterrent strategy is at the moment, but we generally have an idea that the French will fire a warning shot across the bow. That's their nuclear policy, and the British also have the letter of last resort. So we'll have to see largely how they will join in on their nuclear deterrent policy against the Russian Federation, if they join the United States or if they take a more middle-of-the-ground approach. But that is generally the policy or deterrent strategy that is being made at the moment by the President of the United States. We then were able to hear that according to the Russian state media, in a fairly interesting statement, apparently the Russian Ministry of Defense reached out to the U.S. Department of Defense today at the Pentagon and requested to know where these submarines were going to be, which is actually something that usually is given to them in a sort of a broader perspective, and the Pentagon did not respond at all and did not give them an answer. So it does appear that, at least in that form, that is going to freak out the Russians a little bit. Because, just to let you all know a little bit, generally whenever nuclear submarines are put underway anywhere in the world from any country, everyone kind of lets everyone else know the general broader areas that they're going to be in. They don't give them the exact coordinates. And actually, as a matter of fact, nobody actually knows exactly where their submarines are after they go underway, because those submarines go radio silent to be able to protect their exact locations and positions from the enemy, but that also means that we have no contact with them. So we generally don't even know where they will be exactly at any given point in time, but we know where they're generally going to be deployed to because we give them their orders to sail. But beyond that, we don't know exactly where they are. So usually if the Russians request where are they going to be, we'll tell them something like they're in the Barents Sea, or they're in the Mediterranean, or something along those lines. The Pentagon has decided to completely revoke even that right and has not given any answer to the Russian Ministry of Defense as to where these nuclear submarines are going to be, meaning that the attack vectors are entirely unpredictable, at least as far as the Russians are concerned. And if the Russians started a nuclear war, these nuclear ICBMs, the Tridents, carried by the Ohio-class nuclear submarines, could be fired from anywhere, and the only moment that the Russians would find out is once those nuclear missiles are fired. So that is actually something, by the way, to add on to let you all know, that is actually a good bit different than the normal deployment of nuclear submarines. We generally give an idea of where they are in a larger vicinity. We're not even giving them that privilege this time. They are underway, and the Russians have no clue where they are, or where they will be, or where they could strike from. So that is actually quite a significant development in its own right. We also were able to hear as well that the President of the United States made it incredibly clear today, as an icing on the cake, that the United States is totally prepared for nuclear war against the Russian Federation, making it incredibly clear that the deterrent policy is as follows. Any action, nuclear threat or otherwise, by the Russian Federation will be met with an equal or stronger response of nuclear deterrence by the United States of America. This is quite truly the only response that we can make at this point, folks, just to be entirely honest with you all. We have seen for years that the Russian Federation has openly threatened nuclear warfare over just about every single issue and continues to push the line or the envelope on what they consider pretty much the complete destruction of the United States over. The United States is making it clear at this point that such threats will no longer be tolerated, and if the Russian Federation would like to continue to make those threats, we'll make it incredibly clear that the Russians will not live to see the light of day tomorrow to be able to make clear on those threats. That is what the United States is doing today. That is the only action that the United States of America could make. And so for the large part, I would have to say, on an analytical standpoint, this is an incredibly good and strong foreign deterrence policy. And I do want to say this really quickly because I do know that many people are, of course, greatly concerned about the idea of the United States and Russia largely facing down each other with nuclear weapons clearly aimed at each other and ready to fire at any minute, much like it was during the Cold War. I do have to say this, folks. As far as that goes, I know that that's very concerning and very worrying to a lot of people. The problem is, however, is that we have to respect our own rights and interests as a sovereign state, as a part of the largest military and economic alliance on the planet. And if we are not willing to do that, we are going to lose everything that we have today. And I know that a lot of people find that to be a fairly abstract sort of a thing, a fairly abstract sort of a statement. But a lot of what the United States is, for good and for bad in the modern day, is because of the sort of sphere of influence that we have built up, especially since the end of the Second World War. If we are not willing to defend that sphere of influence from foreign aggression, of that of the Russians or the Chinese, we will eventually lose the entire alliance that makes America economically feasible in the modern day. That gives you all the quality of life, whether you believe it's good or bad. It is the quality of life that you all have that comes from our sphere of influence and the ability that we have to be able to protect our interests abroad. This is the only response we can make. If we continue to let the Russians keep threatening us with the use of nuclear arms over every single incident and every single situation, and we continue to back off, and the Chinese continue to do that as well, we are eventually going to be whittled down to having absolutely nothing. We will not have allies. We will not have any money. We will not have an economy. The Russians and the Chinese will take what we have from us. That is what they clearly want to do. That's what Xi Jinping in the 5th plenum of the 19th People's Congress clearly stated China is working towards. That is what Vladimir Putin has also stated through the Ruski Mir philosophy that the Russian Federation is going for. If it's between us in the United States and them in Russia and China, as far as the West is concerned, it's going to be us over them every single day of the week. And we're going to have to make that incredibly clear from this point on, that America's toes and the toes of our allies will no longer be stepped on by these insane and dangerous threats made by the Russians over nuclear conflict. But nevertheless, it does seem as though a lot of people are also throwing in their statements and opinions on the actions and warnings made by the President of the United States today. And Matthew, what are people thinking about these statements, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we asked you all in the poll question, what do you think about the U.S. president saying that the U.S. is totally prepared for nuclear war against Russia? And he aimed those statements at the Russians directly. So he said that straight to them. Obviously a very ballsy move there, but it looks like 54% said that was an appropriate statement, while 28% said the statement was going too far, and 11% said I'm 50-50 on the issue. And of course, like I said, it's a ballsy statement. That's a hell of a thing to say, because when, of course, you can't get any more serious than nuclear war. So with the U.S. president responding and basically returning fire with that question and also that statement, that puts the whole situation on a different footing. Basically, Russia is left to either say, okay, we're going to back down. We don't want to obviously blow the whole world up in a nuclear war. We're going to back down. Or they can go further and say, we're going to call your bluff and we're going to go for it anyway. If you dare take another step toward Russia, then we're going to really jack up the United States. It could go that far as well. So it's really putting the Russians in a tough spot. They're going to either respond strongly or they're going to back down, or they're going to try to ignore it. Me personally, I think the Russians are going to respond to this, but I'm unsure how they're going to do that. But as for whether the statement was appropriate or not, I think personally it was an appropriate statement, because the Russians have gotten away with threatening us way too long with nuclear war, and it's about time that someone calls their bluff and see whether they mean it or not. And I guess now is the time we're going to find out for sure. So I'm with the 55%. But Enforcer, what say you?
And really quickly, I see some people saying this, and it's a very interesting sort of a statement. And once again, I'm kind of understanding where people are coming from with this, but I also have to explain it and call a spade here. A lot of people are saying, look, if we threaten nuclear war against the Russians, then the first time a nuke is fired, everyone loses everything. No one wins in a nuclear war. And that's the point. Nobody wins. Right now, for 3.5 years, the Russians have threatened nuclear war, and nobody has responded. They are threatening nuclear war over everything. And if we continue to not answer that, what do we get? We have 3.5 years to show what we get. We get the Russians continuing the war in Ukraine, threatening anyone who ever tries to get involved in the support of Ukraine, and not only that, they're preparing for an eventual war in Europe. It's clear because of the creation of the Leningrad military district and the rapid buildup of forces inside of the Kaliningrad Oblast and along the Baltic borders in Finland. They are preparing for a conventional war with NATO, not responding to their nuclear threats or to their threats of armed buildup along the borders of sovereign NATO states, provided the common defense under Article 5 of the NATO Charter is something that we get in response to not answering the Russian nuclear threat. If we respond, it is dangerous. It is concerning. That I can agree. But there is no other option that we have. If the Russians think they can win a nuclear war, they are going to go to the very limit of actually having one. We have to make it clear that nobody wins in a nuclear war, and the best way to play the nuclear game is to not play the game at all. That is what we are doing. The only way we can end up facing down the Russians is to make it incredibly clear that if they're willing to kill every single American with a nuclear weapon, the United States of America is perfectly fine with killing every single Russian with American nuclear weapons. That is the only sort of a way that we can force the Russians into never playing that game, is to make it clear that they will lose it, much like we will lose it as well. That is a mutually assured destruction nuclear policy. It is the one that the United States has had for 70 years, and it's the one that the United States has today. We have no other choice. If we do not face them down, they are going to continue to push into the rest of Europe. And who's to say that they eventually don't put their ambitions onto a real nuclear armed power in Europe? But the United States isn't the only nuclear armed power in Europe, and Russia isn't either. The French and the British are also nuclear armed as well. What happens if they push all the way through Europe eventually, and we slowly let them do it because we're scared to actually face them down and tell them that this is it and the buck stops here? What happens when they reach the French borders? What happens when they start to land invasion forces in the UK, if they ever did? What would happen then? Nuclear war is going to happen at that point. It's going to happen either way. There's no other way around this. This is the only sort of an option. This is the only sort of literally the only foreign policy path we can take at this point. I honestly,
you know what's weird is that we're currently using the Russian strategy against themselves at this point, because what the U.S. president basically just did is he tried the Russian strategy of escalate to de-escalate. That's typically what the Russians did in the past, especially during Soviet times. They would do this strategy of taking things to the extreme to then de-escalate, and that was their sort of like loose strategy. The U.S. just turned that strategy on the Russians themselves. the U.S. president said, checkmate, we're going to threaten them with nuclear war, meaning the Russian Federation, and we're going to let them decide, are you going to de-escalate now? So we'll have to see how that works in reverse, if it does work in reverse, because typically that's what Russia does to everybody else, but now we're using the same strategy against them, so I'm really not sure exactly how they're going to respond to it. It's kind of an unknown.
It is an unknown for the large part, and I see some people talking about the dead hand. The thing is, folks, is that our nuclear doctrine is entirely defensive. Even still, it's entirely defensive, and that's also something that I have to clarify for a lot of people who may not know. America doesn't have a do whatever you want with the nuclear weapons policy. Our nuclear policy is that we only fire off nuclear weapons in defense of the nation. If we are under a nuclear attack, we will fire them. If we are under a nuclear attack in Europe through tactical nuclear means, we will fire our nukes back. If it seems as though there's an existential threat to the existence of the United States, we will fire the nukes in our defense. That is the only way that we fire our nuclear weapons. We don't have to worry about the Russian dead hand because we will never strike first. The Russians will always be the one to strike first, at least by our nuclear doctrine. The nuclear submarines are there not to try and nuke the Russians or make them think we're about to nuke them. It's to sit there and say, you say that crap one more time, and you actually follow through on that, and we will launch these nukes, and the Russian Federation will be no longer by 30 minutes from now. That's the statement that's being made, and a lot of people have got to understand that. This isn't some sort of an insane sort of an idea or an insane sort of a notion that we are pushing nuclear submarines out there right onto the Russian border to start launching nukes at them tomorrow. That's not happening. And it's up to the Russians, once again, we're giving them a choice. They can either start a war, and they can end up starting the nuclear conflict, and we'll finish it. We might not be around to see it, but we will sure as hell finish it. Or they can decide not to. And the smarter idea for everyone involved would be for them to not do it. That's how this deterrent policy works. That's literally deterrence in a nutshell. That is what we have to do. And it's what we're doing right now. So I would say that this is actually it's a scary move, I will say, and of course it's a little bit nerve-wracking to me as well. I'd have to agree with all of y'all. But at the same time, we have to think of this from a logical perspective where we're driven more so by reason than emotion. And there's no other option that could be made. It doesn't matter who would be the President of the United States right now. Anyone making this action or making this call is making the only call that is left. There's no other option that we have at this point. So we have to go back to the mutually assured destruction doctrine, and we have to go back to a clear and solid nuclear deterrent. That's the only way we can stop this. But anyways, with that,
honestly, and not to rabbit hole too much on this, but one thing that Russia could end up doing, because now they're pushed into a corner, because Russia can only rely on their nuclear threats to defend their country because their military is weak. And they know that. Putin said that before he started the Ukraine war. He said if he went up against a war with NATO, that Russia would lose in a conventional war. He knows that's the case, and especially now that his military's been weakened, he's definitely going to lose on the conventional war front. But the catch is, though, with the nukes, that is their safeguard for Russia to make sure that they're not invaded or attacked preemptively, is the nuclear weapons. So what Russia could do, which would be very unfortunate, is they could use a tactical nuke in Ukraine to prove the fact that they are serious about the nuclear threats, and technically that would not be starting a nuclear war with the West, but it would be enough to show that Russia is willing to use a nuke. So that could be the next step that Putin takes to prove that he means business if he really wants to take it that far, which would be obviously horrific, and the U.S. should respond to that if he did it.
Also, really quickly, another thing is I see a lot of people bringing up endless points. The United States has a deterrent strategy, a deterrent doctrine. We have a defensive nuclear doctrine. We only use them if we are attacked first. That is how it works. That's also how Russian nuclear doctrine has actually been heavily altered through the war in Ukraine. It almost doesn't work that way anymore. Russia can actually justify the use of nuclear weapons under their current nuclear doctrine from a conventional war with a non-nuclear power, meaning that they are largely the closest to being the North Koreans, which are the only country in the world that has a preemptive strike first offensive nuclear doctrine, meaning that they don't even have to be under an existential threat. They can just decide to fire the nukes and they'll fire them. And there can be under no provocation whatsoever. So as far as North Korea is concerned, they are pretty much the main rogue nuclear state in the world. Everyone else on the planet has a defensive nuclear deterrent policy. But with the Russian Federation threatening the use of preemptively using nuclear weapons, that's what's going on right now, and that's the response that's been made by the President of the United States today. It's the only one that can be made. That's just the truth of it. But with that, it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news and larger developments we have been able to get from today, as we have been able to hear of other significant developments inside of the region. We have been able to hear that a Russian drone was confirmed to have hit Lithuania. This is actually a picture of the Shahed drone that was found wrecked inside of Lithuania, and the Lithuanian Defense Minister Dovile Saklien confirmed that a drone believed to be a Russian Gerbera designed to mimic Iranian Shahed drones was found at the Gaizenai training ground in Janava district after entering from Belarus earlier this week. The Lithuanian military is currently
Isn't that kind of interesting? Isn't that kind of interesting? Am I lagging?
I'm not really sure.
I think I am lagging, but isn't that interesting though? It was found on the training ground inside of Lithuania. That's a bit crazy because I think the last time that a Russian drone went into Lithuanian airspace, which is obviously a NATO country, it crashed out in a random field somewhere inside of Lithuania, but this time it landed on the grounds of a military training ground. That seems a little suspicious, and remember, this is the second time in just a month that a Russian drone entered a NATO airspace in the same place outside of Vilnius in Lithuania, literally within a month. That's a little bit suspicious if you ask me.
Yeah, it's an incredibly suspicious thing. We do understand that the Lithuanian military is currently investigating the wreckage and also any other details surrounding the crash site at the moment, but still quite an interesting development. Meanwhile, Poland has also made it clear today that they're developing new naval theories involving the use of littoral sea drones in the Baltic near to Gdynia and Gdansk, or as it was formerly known, Danzig. This appears to be mirroring Ukrainian tactics used in the Black Sea, which are largely littoral in nature, and what we are believing is, considering that the Polish coastline is incredibly close to the Russian Kaliningrad flotilla at Baltisk, which you can see some of those ships right here on satellite, it may be the case that they are actually preparing this sort of a naval doctrine to be able to directly counter, in a littoral combat sense, the Russian flotilla at Kaliningrad and pretty much blockade them in. Otherwise, they could come under the threat of a drone swarm at sea that would be able to overpower and pretty much destroy any Russian vessels that would be attempting to set sail from the Baltic Peninsula and out into the greater Baltic. So it does appear that the Polish are now developing a naval doctrine specifically to counter the Russian Kaliningrad flotilla in Baltisk. We also were able to hear that the Germans are continuing to provide more Patriot missile systems to Ukraine, with another 2 Patriot fire units being delivered from Germany to Ukraine in the coming days, according to the German Ministry of Defense. We also have been able to hear as well, to really quickly cover this is kind of a part of the Ukraine war segment, but still it's something a little bit interesting to cover, that Belarus has declared that they're forming a new SOF brigade of the army, which will be based in the Gomel region, which is directly just north of Kyiv. That's according to the Special Operations Forces Commander Denisenko just today from the Republic of Belarus. This is an incredibly interesting move, as it has been surmised that the Russian Federation and Belarus may attempt a new offensive towards Kyiv at some point during the remainder of the war, and that may actually be a pretty decent telltale sign that they're trying to specialize their forces to be able to prepare to drop them off well ahead of their forces, take key crossroads or strategic areas, and then allow for the main force to relieve them as they continue to advance. So it may be a repeat of the attempted capture of the Hostomel airport, which was tried by the Russian VDV in the very opening hours of the war back in 2022. But still, that is once again showing us that the Russian Federation and the Republic of Belarus still have largely no intent in stopping the war, because this actually appears to be an attempt to further augment their offensive situation on the front lines in Ukraine and to open a new front just a couple of dozen miles away from the capital of Ukraine. But
isn't it kind of weird though how Belarus is literally willing to jump right in the middle of this situation? Like, it really seems like, even though Belarus is a puppet state of Russia, it would seem like they would make every effort under the sun to try to stay out of this whole situation, because if Russia's about to go to war with NATO, Belarus is going to be taking the brunt of the punishment from NATO, because they're obviously right there on the border with NATO countries in the Baltics. So, you know, Belarus is putting themselves in some very bad harm's way by getting aggressive and also going along with Putin's plan to aggress on NATO like that. That is stupid from a Belarusian sovereignty standpoint.
I would have to say it is really stupid, honestly reckless, but I think Lukashenko is pretty much being forced around on a leash at this point by Putin. I would generally have to believe, because the actions of Belarus make no sense at all, really, like most of the time. And it appears that they're more so just benevolently allowed to kind of just sit around sometimes by the Russians, but when the Russians want Lukashenko to dance, he dances because he really has no other choice. Though we have been able to hear that the Russians have been dealt a death nail in foreign policy, at least over the past day. For one, it appears that the relationship with the Azerbaijanis is completely gone. The Azerbaijanis are now blasting TASS, which is one of Russia's main propaganda networks, for the following. For its part, Azertag, which is an Azerbaijani state-run television network, has authorized to state that the agency is committed to maintaining good relations with TASS while expecting its Russian colleagues to correct the mistake made. If the Azerbaijani side does not see reciprocity and understanding, then with great regret we will be forced to recall and begin using the historical names of the cities of Kaliningrad, Königsberg, Orenburg, Sarasu, and also Solzagala, Sudzakale, Toyohara, Furukampapu, or wait, hang on, let me get that one correct.
What the hell?
Furuka-mapu. That is incredibly difficult. Petruskoy, Ishkar, and Itil. And also a list of other names. Because to really quickly let y'all know what TASS did, TASS is starting to refer to all of the cities in Azerbaijan by their Russian names and not their native Azerbaijani names, as an attempt to disrespect, and to also start to convey that the Russians view Azerbaijan a lot like Ukraine, where it's just a former part of Russia that hasn't been reclaimed yet. So the Azerbaijanis are making it clear, at least on the media sense, that they're actually going to start calling a lot of cities that have been renamed by their original names. Probably one of the more interesting ones is Kaliningrad being named Königsberg, because if y'all do know, Königsberg was actually a significant part of the German Empire, or largely Prussia through most of its history. And let me go really quickly and show you all the German Empire, at least its existent landholdings in Europe. This is what Germany at a time, if y'all have not ever seen it before, looked like. And Königsberg is right there, like it is in the modern day. Once the Russians, or the Soviet Union, took this from the Germans at the end of World War II, they turned it into an oblast and renamed the city Kaliningrad, which is a Russified version of Königsberg. So it does appear that the Azerbaijanis are now going to start doing a tit-for-tat on the television side of things and start listing off these cities by their historic names, which are not Russian. But still, moving on from that, we've also been able to see that while their diplomatic relations with the Azerbaijanis are all but gone, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of the whole myriad of things that has happened between Russia and Azerbaijan over the past few weeks, we've also been able to hear that something has started to happen in India that's actually a little bit surprising and a bit of a big shift. We've always said on the channel that India is the weak link of the BRICS alliance, but it actually does appear that it's a weaker link than we ever realized, because all of y'all know that solidarity is strength in the modern world, and if you can get a whole bunch of people or a whole bunch of countries put together in one alliance, you can generally have a lot of power with that sort of thing. You know, it's like a can of soup. You can put a lot of power into that thing. But beyond that, we were able to hear that India is no longer buying Russian oil as of today. We were able to hear that the President of the United States stated that, and we also were able to see that this was followed along with verifiable evidence that India's largest oil refiner is now snapping up millions of barrels of crude from the United States and the United Arab Emirates after facing pressure to stop importing Russian oil. We were also able to hear earlier today, I didn't include this on our map, that 3 Russian oil tankers have been anchored off the coast of India after being refused entry, and it now appears that those vessels may be desperately trying to find anyone at this point that might be able to buy this Russian oil before it's completely cut off through the sanctions and tariffs that will be implemented on the 8th of August. So it does appear that the Indians have actually backed off, and they are not going to be purchasing Russian oil from this point, and they're now going to be moving on to the Middle Eastern oil producers or oil markets, and also the American oil market as a substitute. So it actually does appear that one of 2 of Russia's largest oil purchasers, the People's Republic of China and the Republic of India, out of the 2, the Republic of India has already started to completely move away from Russian oil before the sanctions on August 8th have even officially been implemented. So incredibly good to see, and it does appear that as far as the economic impact we're making on the Russians, this was actually a very dangerous play in my opinion, and I actually thought that this would not turn out well. I will actually have to say that despite my expectations, this did turn out well. We also were able to hear that U.S. diplomats are being refused entry, just as a small note, into high-end hotels in Karachi, because apparently there's going to be some sort of an attack of a terroristic type that'll be conducted at the high-end hotels somewhere in Karachi, Pakistan. So U.S. diplomats are now being told that they will not be able to stay in those hotels, and they'll have to pick Super 8 or some equivalent to that in Karachi. So a little bit unfortunate with that. It appears that American diplomats will suffer for a small period by having a Roach Motel experience in Karachi because they can't go to the high-end hotels. But nevertheless, that is generally all the information that we've been able to get out of the Republic of India. And we also have a large amount of information that's been coming out of East Asia today as well, which has also been incredibly interesting to say the least. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been talking about the Indians already turning away, and we actually do have verifiable proof that they are turning away from Russian oil already. And a lot of people have been talking about that and what's been going on with that and what's the end result of that going to be. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so it looks like the weak link, which is India. And remember, I want to say this right off the bat. China is the #1 purchaser of Russian oil, followed by India, and then followed by Turkey as well. So that's 3 major components that are purchasing Russian oil that keeps the Russian economy on its feet. Right now, India, which is the 2nd largest purchaser, allegedly has stopped buying Russian oil after U.S. demands to do so. So now what happens? 44% said China will buy more oil to help Russia and their economy stay afloat, while 37% said the Russian economy will fall apart soon, and 12% said Russia will find a new buyer and supplement the losses that India is now causing the Russian Federation. So, I would say this. I'm a big believer that China is going to swoop in and save the day for Russia. They're going to start purchasing more Russian oil, at least in my personal opinion, to make sure that their allies stay solvent and to make sure that they stay in economic good standing so that way they don't fall apart economically, and that would mess up the entire alliance that China and Russia has. India really didn't care. India could have cared less. They're not really trying to be really good friends with the Russians, so they don't care if Russia falls. But China does care, and I think they're going to swoop in and help them and not let them fall apart. So I'm with the 44%. I'm sticking to my guns on that one and saying that China will swoop in and save the day. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would have to be with the 44%. I believe that the Chinese are going to be trying to buy more oil, but they have a limit as well, and it is not that much farther from here. We already were able to hear from China's state-owned oil refineries that they have pretty much capped out their strategic reserves of petroleum that could be refined into usable fuel. And for that reason, they can only import a finite amount unless they're willing to build a whole bunch of petroleum storage tanks and just start rapidly building out their strategic stockpile that they can actually store at the moment. Now, we really don't know if China will want to go under the necessary expense and also construction times to be able to build out their strategic reserves and just keep buying Russian oil and keep floating their economy. So there is also a limit to what China can do. In the short run, I would say that they're going to try and buy more oil to help the Russians, but unless if they start building out their strategic reserves at a monumental scale, they can only help them out so much before they also run out of room. Room is finite, and then they will no longer be able to purchase Russian petroleum because they wouldn't even have anywhere to store it at that point. So I would have to generally say I'm with the 43%, but only in the short term. I think Chinese support of the Russian economy would fizzle out in that form, and they pretty much have to start subsidizing Russia with hard cash at some point if they continue to buy Russian petroleum products or gases. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And that's actually going to be moving us on into something else that is quite major today, which is the East Asian news, because there's actually been a fairly serious sort of a warning that has been made by the Taiwanese government, or as it's called, the Republic of China's government, that has been made today about an imminent threat by the Communist Chinese. But before we get on into that, I do want to make sure that we get a couple of questions in the chat and get to talk to you all a little bit, because we actually have about 19,000 people here right now, and it's been a huge stream tonight. I got to thank all 20,200 people who were here at the peak for being here tonight, and all the 110,000 people who watched so far. I hope you all been enjoying our news coverage. I hope it's well informed and well researched. And I got to say, folks, that while today has been an incredibly alarming and concerning day, I can't really disagree with that, I also have to tell you all to exercise a great deal of control and a great deal of calmness. This is what we have to do. I know that it's scary and very concerning. I would agree with you all. But at the same time, I also want to make sure to heavily emphasize that everyone has to remain calm. The country will pull through this, and we will be able to get to the other side if we stay strong, if our allies stay consolidated like we are right now, and we all continue to remain calm in the United States and do not descend into panic. We will be able to make it through. We have to be more coordinated, and we have to be more cohesive than our adversaries and enemies are, like the Russians and the Chinese, but we will get through this just fine. I want to make that incredibly clear. I know a lot of people are concerned about what's going on today and what's most likely going to be going on in the coming days and weeks. but I have to promise you all that it will be a lot better if we make this through in a very calm and collected manner. Chaos and panic does not help anyone. It only hurts us extra, and it makes it worse. So with that, we are going to be moving on into the questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping right into our first Super Chat segment, our first one goes to Danny B, a longtime channel legend, and thank you very much, Danny, for that $50 support, and we appreciate that very, very much. And Danny said, good evening, Enforcers, Chef Danny here, and glad to have you all back tonight, but back to work I go, and I'll be listening, and take one from the chat and LLT LSA.
Hey, and it's great to have the Chef of the LSA here tonight. It's good to see you. We saw you very early on, I think in the 10-minute, well, not the 10 minutes, actually an 8-minute countdown now. But I do thank you so much for the support tonight. I hope you're doing well. But I understand you've got to work hard. You are the official chef of the LSA, and I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't have been able to keep it running, and we wouldn't be able to be here to cover pretty strenuous and concerning news like we are tonight. But a huge thanks to you once again, and we will make sure to take one from the live chat in your honor. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so the live chat question goes to Epic Trains Canada, who said, if Russia can't sell its oil to anybody, will Ukraine still hit their oil refineries or use their resources to hit something else? Now, funny you mentioned that, Epic Trains Canada, because literally right before we went live, Ukraine actually struck the Ryazan oil refinery. We got the initial footage of that, and of course they're right back to striking the refinery. So Ukraine heard oil. You're going to sell oil to who now? Because India's going to back off and not purchase it. So Ukraine smashed another Russian refinery to send a big thank you to Putin for doing that, and also for send a big thank you to India for also backing off the Russian oil purchases. So I think you're going to find, at least in my opinion, that Ukraine is going to reallocate resources and drones to attack those refineries again, because they're seeing an opportunity here that they can't pass up. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that yes, they will, because the supply side of things is actually a little interesting with petroleum. We could actually make a whole documentary about it and how it works, because it's actually very intricate and very interesting, at least to me personally. I'm, a nerd like that. But as far as it goes, Russia still has to keep their refineries running, because what they sell, they don't sell gas. To try and explain this the best way I can, people don't sell gasoline to each other or refined fuel products to each other anywhere. It's incredibly difficult to transport, and also gasoline actually does expire, if y'all do not know. Because after a while, if it sits around long enough, it will settle and it will start to pretty much stratify itself, and then it's largely unusable. So there actually is a shelf life on refined fuel products, but there isn't a shelf life on actual crude oil, or petroleum as it's called. That is something that generally is shelf stable permanently. It was shelf stable on the ground. It's still shelf stable once you get it out of the ground. So what Russia does to make its money is that they pump crude oil, which looks like tar, it pretty much is, but they pump crude oil into their ships, and they sail that around the world to a place like China or India, and then India offloads that crude into a storage tank, and it stays in that storage tank until they need usable fuel, and then they refine it into diesel, gas, jet fuel, and everything else, because there's actually a lot of stuff, it's so deep to get into. Petroleum is actually a very pliable sort of a material. You can use it for literally everything, and we put petroleum in, everyone puts petroleum in just about everything these days. It goes into the tar that makes the roads, it goes into your cars to keep them running, it goes into ships to keep them rolling with a totally different kind of fuel, which is called bunker sea oil, and also other types of marine grade fuel, jet fuel, a million different applications beyond just fuel to keep vehicles moving. But they will refine it into what they need at the time, but it stays as crude until they do. So with Russia, their refineries are only based on domestic fuel production. They're not making fuel like gasoline and diesel to sell overseas. Their oil refineries are just trying to keep their country supplied with usable fuel and other things that they would need refined petroleum products for. So if the Ukrainians keep hitting them, they're denying the Russians their generally stockpile of actual usable fuel products, or their ability to continue to produce to meet the demand. And the Russians have generally been, for about a year or so, or a little bit longer than that, actually running in a significant fuel deficit by the hundreds of thousands of barrels a day, and that means that they're actually having to either buy those fuel products from another country, which is incredibly rare and really expensive to do, or they're just running out. So the Ukrainians will keep hitting those refineries because it's more so a domestic production side of things than it is to really hurt their money making or their revenue streams. That's really the greater purpose on a strategic standpoint, to hit those refineries than trying to just damage their economic abilities. So I hope that addresses that the best I can, at least at the moment, because.
Oh, also by the way, but real quick before you move on from that one, speaking of the oil refineries being hit, since we're on that exact question, I mentioned the Ryazan oil refinery being hit just at the beginning of my answer earlier, but also we literally just got this literally minutes ago. Ukraine also attacked the Samara refinery as well, the oil refinery in Samara. So two of them have actually been struck, the Ryazan and Samara one. One of them was run by Rosneft. In fact, the one in Samara got hit so bad it looks like it had a catastrophic explosion right in the center of the facility itself. We just got the video of that happening. In fact, it could be one of the clearest videos we've ever seen of an attack on one of their refineries. Unfortunately, if you want to pull that up real quick on Twitter, that might be worth taking a quick break to show that. It's crazy footage.
Let's see, and this is the Novokubishevsk oil refinery, and I think this is the Novoshoy. I actually got this right, man. I geolocated this while you were talking. You're like, it happened in Samara, and I zoomed right in on the right one. So this is the one, folks, right here. And here's the footage that we have in 4K Ultra HD of the Russians, and as the kids call it, lacking. Here's the clip. We see the impact right there. And that is quite a significant hit. It looks like it may have been a direct hit on a condenser.
Huge fireball.
But that's the end of that clip right there. And really quickly, folks, let me see if I can fix something on Discord's end. And let me see if I can fix this really quickly. And there we go. So hopefully that will work. But beyond that, that was quite a significant hit. And let's see where the impact was again. So it actually was directly on a condenser tower. That's a condenser tower right there. These are incredibly important to the refining process. Condenser tower is pretty much like I know a lot of y'all know at least how alcohol is made or alcoholic beverages are made. That is pretty much the part of the still, if you want to call it that, like an alcohol still, that allows for the distillate to accumulate or striate or stratify itself to be able to pretty much be skimmed into different products or purposes. Those condenser towers are incredibly important for that. I'm not really a petroleum refining expert, but that's generally a very critical part of the facility that you wouldn't want to lose, and it looks like the Ukrainians hit it dead on. So the reason why the explosion was so big like this is probably because that's a lot of the vapors inside of the condensing tower that just literally exploded once it came into contact with the explosion.
Yeah, and also notice this as well. Russia claimed they were moving air defense around their oil refineries, and that was contributed to part of the reason why Ukraine sort of reeled back their attacks on the refineries. But notice this is one of their largest refineries in Samara, and it had a direct hit from a Ukrainian drone. So apparently the air defense is either been moved away from the refineries or it was never there in the first place. Because to have a direct hit like that, they obviously have nothing protecting that facility.
Yeah, it looks like it was a fairly heavy hit, and also, once again, we're seeing that they have no air defense. It's only small arms fire from rifles and heavy machine guns, and really no actual adequate air defense ever seen in the area. So it does appear to be a pretty heavy hit, and that's pretty much the answer to the live chat. Yes, the Ukrainians are going to continue to hit the refineries because the refineries serve a more strategic purpose for the Russian Federation than an economic money-making strategic purpose. So I hope that does answer that the best we can, and a big thanks to you once again for the support and sponsoring our live chat, Danny B, because folks like you help to make this channel possible and also help us to answer incredibly great questions from the live chat. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Albert Martel, who puts in a 50 as well. And thank you very much, Albert, as well for that support and also helping to keep the channel running. And he said, for that drunk fella in Russia to F around and find out, in Albert's words, of course, he said, keep up the great work and the reporting.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I think the Russians are finally going to start finding out that nuclear threats come with nuclear deterrence. It's crazy. Consequences of actions. Who would have ever thought? Like, you know, the whole modern world pretty much revolves around everyone never being held accountable for their actions. And it looks like the Russians are finally being held accountable for a lot of their actions, such as their threats of nuclear destruction against the United States. And it's a little bit interesting with that. It's a little bit nice to see. And folks, it just kind of blows me away a little bit with folks in the chat who are like, we're all gonna get killed. It's like I don't know if they know this, but the Russians were already threatening to kill all of us already. Like if you're in America, at least in the United States, they were already threatening to kill all of us for like 3 years with their nuclear weapons. The only difference is now it's not being unanswered. Where the United States government is saying, if you're going to kill all of the people in the United States, or at least a third of them within about an hour, we're going to do the same thing to Russia. As a matter of fact, actually, it's actually worse for the Russians because of their population densities. I'll actually show you that. Russian population density map. So let me see here if I can get the cool one. Because here we go. So this is the Russian population density map made in 3D. To give you all a little bit of an idea is where most Russians live. Funnily enough, they all live in like 2 major cities. Well, actually that's about a quarter of the country's population. So as far as a mutually assured destruction doctrine goes, it's generally assumed that in a nuclear conflict, 30% of all of America's citizens would die within the first hour of a nuclear exchange, and another third would die within the first year. In the Russian Federation, it's actually different. Around 40% of all citizens of the Russian Federation would die within the first hour of a nuclear exchange, and about another 40% would end up dying within the first year. So it actually, as far as the mutually assured destruction doctrine goes, it's incredibly bad for both sides, but it's actually markedly worse for the Russian Federation because of their lack of disbursement or extreme population density that they have within their urban centers. So a little bit.
Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild to see that on the map? Like literally, out of all that land mass that Russia has, most of their population is concentrated on the, I guess you could say, the European side of Russia, and the whole country is pretty much a desert. Like when it comes to like people being out there, there's nobody out there except for the European part of Russia. It's literally right up on the border with NATO countries and other countries like that. So it's really